Here's more of the Mike Buck Show on 690 The Answer.
Hooray, we're number 2. It's Minority Monday. And I say that with tongue-in-cheek because it's sometimes pretty hard to know that if you are a member of a small group and you've got to interact with a larger group, the challenge is quite clear. And that's what's happening in the big square building right now, particularly when it comes down to this time of the year where it gets pretty serious, what bills are going to be and what bills are going to be not. And I must tell Beth Fukumoto Chang a couple of things. First of all, as you know, I had the opportunity of going down to the big square building the other day. We did on Tuesday, which was the day after I saw you last week. We did a neat remote from what are you on? Are you on 3? Oh, change it 3. Let's see if that works. We did a remote down to the rotunda, and I was so pleased because it's kind of orderly. You guys are used to that, right? Because it's every day somebody's on there.
Yes.
And okay, you know what? I'm going to get you to pull that other guy. Yeah, let's be number 2 instead of number 3. That's microphone. That's technical talk.
Okay.
You guys, much better. Because I actually saw the process, and it is interesting. And I'm going to imagine because a lot of senators and reps that were, walking about the rotunda on their way here and there, they said, "Oh, what's going on?" In other words, y'all pay attention when people actually take the trouble to come down there.
Oh, absolutely, especially when big groups come down.
Yeah. Because I mean, I would imagine that sometimes if you're opposed to what they're doing or vice versa, you got to think, hey, what's a better way to walk to that? I don't want to walk,
right.
But I mean, is it true? Are we getting to a point where we have to really keep an eye on certain things this week?
Yeah, so this week, Ways and Means and Finance are meeting. These should be the last of the committee meetings this entire week. So any bill that you're still watching, if it doesn't make it through committee this week, then it's done.
Somebody asked me by email to please ask you to explain the difference between Ways and Means and Finance.
Okay, so Ways and Means is the Senate Finance Committee, and then House Finance. We just call it different things.
Yeah.
But the way it operates in the state legislature, they're basically the same.
Yeah, I've always sort of explained it. And you know what? Raphael is giving Beth Fukumoto Chang like concierge servicer. That's
I know,
like
it's wonderful. I know, because I never have time to drink my coffee before I leave.
Monday morning is a stress on the household because you have to come from where there's plenty of cars and traffic. You got to go right through the middle of it.
Oh, right through the middle, right?
So you know what your constituents do every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I think that if anything, if the what do they call it? The little grains of sand going through the time. What's the hourglass?
Yes.
If the hourglass is where it gets the bottleneck is always at Finance or Ways and Means.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And is it because that entourage is responsible to say, okay, if this bill gets passed, we can we're not going to be able to fund it, or we are. And is that sometimes when it gets thrown out because it just gets looked at as too big of a thing to do?
A lot of bills get thrown out. So the way it works is we call them subject matter committees. The first set of committees, Health, Human Services, they decide whether or not it's a bill worth passing for those reasons. Is this good for the public health? Is this good for Human Services?
Sure.
And then Finance Committee says, well, maybe it's good for Human Services, but we don't have any money to pay for it.
Sure.
And so they don't
Which
pass
I think
the
is
bill.
something you hear a lot, right?
Yes.
Right.
All
Because
the time.
you see, I think that people get confused when it's the same group of people looking over legislation that deals with, say, healthcare and roads.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a huge number of people that are all barking like hungry birds in a nest at you guys right now.
Oh, yeah. And there's no way to fund everything that everybody wants.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the things that I am concerned about, I read over the weekend, I'm sure that you guys are all talking about this, is that the counties are pretty strong. And they're getting together and they're presenting pretty good reasons why they should be getting a bigger slice of the pie of the tax.
Yes. Yes.
And should that happen, doesn't that mean that the state needs to look for different ways to collect money?
Yeah, I haven't seen the state. I don't think the state has the will to give the counties more money at this point. The counties constantly are looking for more from the state. But I think at least with Honolulu County, we're looking at the rail and other issues right now saying, well, are you guys really managing your money properly?
You know, one thing that I've got to tell you is you must respect the city council for coming up and saying, hey, look, we're going to stop the bleeding. I mean, you know, this thing is predictably gone way over.
Yeah.
Big story over the weekend and today. We're talking now, it's no longer, now they're calling it what it is. And they're still not telling us everything.
Oh yeah, no, it's and nobody can really get to the bottom of why the costs are so high, and it's frustrating.
I am concerned about this. We've explained before, and you're going to do it again. The bottom line, the purse strings here is the state. I mean, if something happens at any county level, they run out of money, the state's going to pick it up.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you look at the numbers, the federal amount of money and the add-on tax don't add up.
Right. So at some point, I think the question is going to end up being, do we continue to extend the GET surcharge? I think that's going to be the question.
Yeah. I'm not only intend to extend it, but increase it. That's the part that everybody's worried about.
Right, right. It's never been something that I favored. I think the city decided to do this project. They need to make sure that they can pay for it, and they need to figure that out. But it's, we're in a tough situation.
They must also be in a tough situation, because the other day they sort of made the announcement that what we're really looking like here initially is a 10-mile rail. Right. Instead of a 20-mile rail. Right,
which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, because
it's
I'm
a
thinking,
useless rail.
Yeah, I was going to say, where does that put us? That put us into where the 10 miles is a big problem.
Right, it could.
You got all these people getting off the thing at the 10-mile mark, and now
right. And the 10-mile mark is about where I got caught in traffic this morning, so it's not very good from there on either.
I drove out to my friend's pods out at Kalailoa, a couple the other day. I must give a tip of the hat to your constituents and to all of you all, because I know that you all are biting your tongue every day and putting up with a lot of inconvenience watching this thing being built right in front of our face every day.
Oh, yeah. It's caused so much more traffic. The road closures were really frustrating last year. This year is not as bad, but last year was pretty bad. We've been dealing with this for years.
I was sort of harsh a few weeks ago, and I didn't mean to be, because I grew up in the retail business. But I felt really bad for a lot of the vendors and service providers along the routes.
Oh, yeah.
Because you cannot get to your customers.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I had to go to this one place. I got to give a tip of the hat to my friend Marie at Aloha Toppers. They do aftermarket stuff on pickups and vans and trucks. They got really neat stuff. And they're doing something to my Lariat from Windward Ford that was just terrific. And I had to go out there to get a little tweaking done on it. Mm-hmm. You cannot turn it right by Cutter Ford in Aiea.
Oh,
you cannot turn into their place of business.
Aiea is bad now. Yes.
And you're thinking, wait a minute. There's a whole bunch of businesses in there. How are they making? Well, they're not.
Right, right. And I think once we get to Kakako, that's one of the reasons, not Kapalama, that's one of the reasons why we've been really encouraging the city and the state to plan all at once, because we don't want to have to shut these businesses down more than once, right? Let's get all the sewer and all the other infrastructure put in place now, so we only have to dig once.
One thing that is very confusing to me, I had the opportunity last week, I know it's city matter, but I'll still share it with you. I had a man in a business that was being displaced. And he understood that, but he owns the property, and he doesn't feel that he was being justly compensated because the guy right next door got a lot more money per square foot. So he's losing his business.
Right.
But he is a kaka'ako businessman making a product that what he really wants to do is continue to make the product, but he wants to build a condo on top of his property, which is his, and he can.
Okay, yeah.
But now, not only is he going to lose his property, but the ability to create his dream legacy,
right?
Where he goes to the next place may not allow him to build a condo. So aren't there a lot of conflicts, and don't you all hear it from people that are saying, "Hey, wait a minute, they're just coming and taking my stuff"? I
think we've heard it less than the city probably has, but what I've heard from Hart is that the purchases have been going pretty well. So I think if people have these kinds of stories, it'd be nice to hear them more often.
I can remember back in the day when they were doing a whole bunch of stuff in Waikiki. We, as merchants, a lot of us said, "Oh boy, here comes our." Now
right.
We were our family who were among the first tenants in the international marketplace, which looked like it was going to be forever. And of course, it's not. Nothing's forever. Now Kings Village is looking at the same thing.
Yep.
But what I'm getting at is that these two economies, if you will, it seems to me they're working alongside each other, and there's some of us have blinders on. You know what I'm getting at? Between the House and the Senate. For instance, aren't there a lot of properties that come into this problem of the rail that are state properties?
Yes, there are a lot of state properties along the line. Not properties we've been using well. So my hope with the rail is that we'll be able to use those properties better and actually generate revenue off of state lands, which we have not really done a good job at yet. But that's looking further and further away.
Well, there are some people that say, look, don't throw into the quotient getting rid of those lands.
Right.
Although there's some that would serve a greater purpose if they did get sold because they're that valuable that the ongoing revenue in taxes will exceed the outpouring of money on maintenance that they're doing right now. So that's a pretty good call, isn't it?
Yeah, I think getting rid of lands is always problematic. That's when we run into all sorts of ceded land issues.
Yeah.
So I think making sure that we're better utilizing the land, or even looking at public-private partnerships, that might be the way to go.
Isn't it somewhat interesting how groups that are looking after the Hawaiian movement are right in their complaint saying, "Look, you guys are making a lot of money off this property. It's kind of our property, and we want more." Right. That's not something you guys ignore, is it?
No, in places like the airport, right, and other places where we are making a lot of money.
We're making a lot of money. Yeah.
Yes, and I think we're looking at trying to. The legislature has looked at ways to justly compensate, but it's so hard to decide what is just compensation. Yeah. Right?
If you've got something in either in generality or in specific that you'd like to know, now would be the time to call. Remember, during these political discussions we have, we don't take email, although I'm getting a bunch of it. If you'd like to speak to Beth Fukumoto Chang or ask her a question or just sort of find out what's happening on something that may be of interest to you, some bills she knows of right here, some we can look up for you. But the number is 296-KHNR. That's 296-5467. But right now, here's news. Okay, it's Monday. It's Legislative Monday. That's what it is. And by the way, you can be a part of the conversation only one way, and that's by telephone at 296-KHNR. I got a couple of specific things by email which we're not going to address, but I did want to tell you one thing, that I do know that every now and again, and this is based on, once again, Beth, our little get-together, seeing how many people were at the Crime Stoppers fundraiser last week at Washington Place. It seems like the majority of people that I spoke to at both the city and the state level are for construction and maintenance of prisons here in Hawaii. That we're getting to a point where we really don't want to be sending people away to the mainland.
I think so. Yeah.
Is it a multiple step process? I mean, obviously we can't build overnight. What are we looking at? Because one gift that you guys have in the ledge that we don't in the public is the vision of the future. I'm worried about what's
supposedly.
I'm worried about what's for dinner Friday.
Right.
You guys are worried about what's for dinner Friday in 5 years.
Right. I like to think so. I don't think everybody always thinks that way. But
what's the light at the end of the tunnel? Is it justifiable? Would it be privatized? What are some of the options that you all are looking at?
Yeah, I think we've looked at all different options for the prisons, but ultimately the probably the best way to go. We are going to have to build new facilities if we're going to keep people here. But it is multi-step. So the first thing would be probably early release for nonviolent offenders. So these are your small time, maybe they got caught with a small amount of marijuana or something like that.
By the way, there was one guy that's coming up that was actually got a life sentence. And it was for something that we're much more tolerant of now. Don't we have to go back and review some of those things? We do.
So there are a lot of people in prison now that probably could be released. So looking at who can we release early? People we've done release bills, compassionate release, if you're about to die, that sort of thing. So who can we release early to clear up space? The other thing is how can we make more space and build? And then the third thing is trying to deal with the labor, right? That's been one of the largest problems, people calling in sick when they're supposed to be there working. And so trying to make sure that our policies reward people that are staying at work when they're supposed to.
Yeah, I got to tell you that I'm very impressed with right now getting we get memos every Friday, and it tells us which of the facilities are going to be open for visitors in the weekend.
Yes.
And it's almost all of them now.
Yes.
So they're seeing the light at the end of that tunnel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But, Beth, the main thing that people were concerned about before is that it was just money. It cost us, say, $30,000 on the mainland. It cost us $50,000 here, no brainer. But there were some in the economy, and I wonder if they're getting to the legislators saying, it's false because it costs a lot more, but the money stays here. We need the money to stay here.
Right, and I think so. That's what I'm hearing the most is at least we keep the money in state. We spend so much, we export so much of our funding in Hawaii for food, for everything else. So when we can do things here and create things here, then we should. Yeah,
and there are some that say even though it does cost us a lot less, that in actual fact it costs us more because when you talk about how many times that money multiplies through the economy.
Right, it's jobs we're not creating. It's people that are not being able to buy houses or food or patronize businesses.
Okay, let's go to the telephones. Let's get you to put a headset on And let's take a couple calls. 296-KHNR is the number. That's 296-5467. I'm not sure what part of town Jack is in, but Ralph, he was too busy to tell me where you are, Jack, but he did tell me his name was Jack. Where are you?
In Kahala.
Hi, Jack. What's up?
Just wondering, what's the status on that bill to save Wahiawa General Hospital?
Okay, good one.
I can answer that. Yeah. So here's the first thing to know about the bill. It's not actually a bill; it's a resolution. So one of the things that has been somewhat frustrating,
and I have no idea, Jack, what the difference is, but Beth will explain.
I'm going to explain it. Yes, one of the things that has been somewhat frustrating to me is this was put to the public as a bill to fund the hospital, and it isn't. A resolution basically just says, it's like a letter of support. It says, we support funding the hospital. It doesn't actually give any funding. So it moved through its first committee. I was there to vote on it, but it's just a suggestion to the Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committee to actually put money into the budget for Wahiawa General. Now, the budget is currently on the Senate side, so even though we moved the resolution through the House, what needed to happen if there was action on the House side is the representative that was putting the money in ideally would have got the money in the budget instead of in a resolution. So now we're working on the Senate side to try to make sure the money actually gets into the budget, because that's how we're going to actually be able to save the hospital.
And Jack, let me add something before you ask Beth a follow-up question, and that is, I'm so pleased that this has come up. What prompted you to do it? What is your involvement, or what are your concerns?
No, I was just worried about all the hospitals in the state,
Mm-hmm.
and just wondering. So it's actually Governor Ige's call.
Well, so right now, no. Right now, it would be the Senate committee.
I see.
Is that once again Ways and Means, or is that Health? Or
Sorry, Ways and Means.
Ways and
Yes,
Means,
the
right.
Senate Ways and Means Committee, and then we're going to have to go to conference, and then we'll decide between the House and the Senate what we're going to be able to support. So it is the legislature's call, but it's in the hands of the Senate right now.
So when would you know if they're going to get the funds they need?
We should know by the first week of May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Jack,
Sure.
thanks very much. That's very interesting, because I can tell you one thing. I've learned a lot. A lot of people don't have an ulterior motive. They call just because they're concerned.
Yeah.
And sometimes the concern might be just geographic, saying, hey, if you take that away, people got to go in traffic to
Right.
get help a lot further, and that must weigh heavily on a lot of you.
And one of the things that we're dealing with, because Wahiawa is right next door to my district,
Yeah.
one of the biggest concerns about the hospital closing down is that we only have a few ambulances in the area that service Wailua, Mililani, all those areas. And if they have to go all the way to Palimomi or out to Eva Beach, then we're going to be losing ambulance time too. So it's a big concern.
And the thing that I most like about learning about that is that ambulances are not necessarily for a kid with a bee sting. A lot of times it's to deal with an issue where every minute counts.
Yes.
That getting that paramedic or that EMT guy or gal on site quickly is very important.
Right. And instead of going next door to Wahiawa now, we're looking at the ambulance needing to go to IAEA, which is really concerning.
Okay, on the same subject, let's go to our perennial contributor, Don, in Kaneohe, this time about HMSA and some of the things that are on concern there. Don, this time of the year, you're a pretty busy guy. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Good morning.
But, my doctor, I'm legally blind, and my doctor has seen me read that.
Okay, Don, you need to get a lot closer to your phone, please.
Okay. But I'm legally blind, and I went to my doctor for my retinal doctor, and he prescribed for a surgery to give me back some sight, and HMSA denied it. And I want to know, is there a bill going through right now with the legislature to amend that or something that so that when doctors put requests, you can get the authorization, so you don't have to go through an agency up on the mainland or whatever and get authorized?
Yes, there is a bill going through now. It's gone through a few changes. It's on the Senate side. So I couldn't tell you exactly what's in it at the moment, but the purpose of the bill is to make sure that HMSA locally can approve instead of having to go elsewhere.
Third source, yeah.
Yeah, because it's taking too long, right?
Yeah, it's taking too long, and then the appeal process is just
Yes.
horrendous. And
Yes.
I feel sorry for other people who have to go through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point,
Yep.
Don, and thank you. There's another thing before I go to break here, which I think is kind of important. There are a lot of bills, or there are a lot of things that you guys talk about all the time that are sometimes in the medical profession considered elective surgery. I mean, whether you get, if something is like, for instance, because of my affinity and my affiliation with Dr. Kistner on our Healthy Veins, Healthy Legs show, There are some veins that are called vanity veins, right? The spider veins.
Right.
And if you want to get them fixed, pay.
Right.
But then there's a point where they become symptomatic, and now they're a varicose vein. They're different, and now you can pay. Aren't there a lot of things out there that people want to see paid by their insurance that are considered, well, this is not life-threatening, so we're not going to approve it?
Right. And it's, I don't think we're doing a good enough job of, explaining to the health insurance companies, or the health insurance companies aren't doing a good enough job of deciding what's elective and what's not.
Okay. We came upon that the other day when we were talking about this transgender, population saying we're being dissed, we're not being respected, we need to get more
with health insurance,
more paid for with
yes.
health insurance.
Yeah.
And much of what they wanted was considered elective. So I don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, 7:45 is the time. Beth Fukumoto Chang and I, we got other things. It's getting close to the wire. Fortunately, there's not a bunch of real big fires down there, but there's still some that are smoldering embers, and we'd like to get to them. It's right now. It's 7:40. Well, not for me, but for Beth Fukumoto Chang and the legislature. Now, we had a call just before the break, and I want to go on that because we've often talked about, in vague generalities, Beth, about privatization versus longer contracts with unions. And I do know that a lot of things that are privatized because of the anticipated cost of labor. But when you take like a property, that may not be the case. It may just be mismanagement or revenue or whatever. Right. So let's take a look. Honokaha Harbor is what the individual was asking. Honokaha Harbor, for those that don't know, is the cash register harbor of the Big Island. It's Honokaha is the home of the huge charter fleet of boats. People come from around the world to go fishing, and it's a great experience. But the harbor's not in real good shape, so a lot of people talk about privatizing it, right?
Right. And it sounds to me, because I know there are Big Island representatives that introduced it, so I think they probably understand better than most why people want it. And my understanding is it's because it's not getting fixed as it should be. Yeah. But I think, one of the problems that we always run into, I generally don't like privatization. And the reason is because I think if government is in charge of something, we should just do it well. Yeah. I think it's sort of a cop-out to constantly be privatizing, especially lands, right? Like you said, it has nothing to do with labor. It's just we can't seem to get it through the bureaucry.
Yeah,
so,
it's kind of disappointing.
It's frustrating.
Because, everybody knows that harbor, like Waianae Small Boat Harbor, like Kehi, like all of them, they're not in ideal condition.
Right.
And, that makes a boat owner or a user of the harbor or the ramp or whatever kind of frustrated, saying, look, I'm paying my taxes, I got my sticker, and, you go to the harbor master's office door and there's nobody there.
Right.
So at Honokaha, I think it's people come back from spending, they can spend $1,500 on a boat or more and come back in no bathroom.
Yes.
Or no toilet paper in the back.
Yes. Yeah. And so I completely understand why the Big Island representatives and why the users would want to do it. I'm always cautious about privatization because it's sort of a cop out for the state. It's the state throwing up their hands and saying we don't know how to do this well, so we're going to quit.
One thing that's always impressed me is, let's say that you're a professional and that you were looking at an opportunity to have a job by the state. To me, that's like getting a job at the shipyard. If you do your job, you're there forever.
Right.
Wouldn't that be the same if you were there at the state level? Administrations come and go, but if you're a good harbor master or you're a good maintenance guy, you're going to keep your job.
Right. I think sometimes the problem is you keep your job whether you're good or not. There's not enough room for, I think, innovation in our state system and for rewarding people who are doing a good job.
What about if you put the pebble in the pond and go further out? And that is, it's not just the harbors. It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things. And we're looking at privatizing. I mean, every year there's privatization bills for all sorts of different things. And that's sort of where I've come up with this feeling like we really need to stop just using privatization as a way out.
There are many, many people that would feel that's a union answer. And I know that you've looked at this before. Yeah. Across the country, unionization has suffered. It is being thought of. Yeah. If a guy like Bernie Sanders is elected, that would be a new wave of unionization because it's the spreading the wealth.
Right.
Put on your personal Beth Fukumoto Chang hat on for a minute. That's kind of important, isn't it? That's a big difference between what the voters are getting a choice to make this November.
It is. I think concerns about privatization, first of all, are not necessarily pro-union concerns. The problem is more because if you look at the hospitals, right?
Sure.
We privatized Maui Memorial. They're all still unionized.
Sure.
It doesn't actually change labor, right? And I think that's the big misconception, is that privatization actually lowers union membership. It's not doing that. Not in Hawaii. So in that case, it's just about management at a state level. But I do think this election, we are looking at, unionization is down overall everywhere. I'm not sure if a different president's really going to change too much of that.
Then let me reframe this and make it something else. So when you take a look at it as a representative, let's say, all right, what's best for the people?
Yes.
I mean, if the state operates something, it is obviously nonprofit. The state's not allowed to profit.
Right.
As a matter of fact, good luck with that. But the other thing is that if you privatize it to a private company, they are profit incentivized. Cannot you also, like the PUC, regulate profit?
You could. I think the PUC has maybe not done a great job of that
No,
either.
but I'm saying is, it doesn't sound like a bad system.
Right.
In other words,
Right.
before a hospital would
Right.
raise its rates or whatever, it'd have to say, okay, you have a monopoly in Wahiawa.
Right.
So you can't do that without really explaining what you're trying to do.
Right. And that's, and when we looked at Maui Memorial, I think one of the concerns when we were privatizing was they didn't want too much overregulation from the state determining what they can and can't profit off of. So it's always a little bit of a battle, because if you're going to privatize, then you want to make them free to do the best that they can instead of overregulating, right?
Well, they say that it wasn't working out too well. Would you take a look at our neighbor islands? Good luck finding an orthopedic surgeon. Good luck in finding an OBGYN. I mean, there's a lot of people coming to Oahu for services that should be provided where they are.
The entire hospital system is in bad shape, private and public. Yeah.
One more thing. Let me ask you this. Is speaking about that, are there any rider bills, speaking about hospitals? I do know that the state hospital is going through more challenges. What's being done to try to shore them up or fix them this session?
I have not seen, we always put through money. One of the things that we haven't seen is an emergency fund for the hospitals, which is the first time since I think I've been elected. But I'm sure we'll put some money into it. But I think overall we're still looking at what's the best way, especially the Hawaii State Hospital. What's the best way to try to basically make them a little bit more profitable.
Okay, here's another one before we go to the phones for the final time. Let's talk about another thing, and that is simply, all right, look, we've got a limited amount of funds. We've got the clock ticking, and now we've got the reality of this independence on energy. And now today, a story came out, well, LNG is less expensive than we thought.
Yeah.
I do know that the governor has really sort of said, forget it to NextEra.
Right.
It looks like that deal is going to go away, despite the support by a lot of groups.
Yeah, there was a lot of support.
I was surprised, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think you had some really powerful people pushing it through, and a lot of financial incentives for it going through.
Especially for unions, right? Because they were, remember in the beginning, no, we don't want these guys.
Right.
Not, we like these guys.
Right. Lots of incentives. So, and the governor's saying, no, we're going to have to come up with a different plan, though, because HECO does need an infusion of capital.
Yeah. Well, just the other day, they're talking about the smart grid and how much it's going to cost.
Yep.
They're not to be blamed, or are they? I mean, some say, well, you guys have been taking a lot of profit out of this company for a long time. Now it's time to put it back in.
I think so. Yeah. I think they have been taking a lot of profit.
Have we still the ability, in your opinion, and more important than that, in the minority caucus's opinion, can we make the mandate of independence?
I don't think so.
Pretty tough,
I don't think. I've never really thought so.
Yeah. But I mean, that puts everybody in sort of an awkward position because it was a mandate.
It does. Yes. Yes, it was.
Some people think, well, that was a bit, you're taking it for granted that we can do these things just because somebody says it.
It was a little
and then
lofty.
They leave office.
Yes, it was a little lofty. Yeah.
However, there are ones that are opposed to there being a stopgap. Is there anything this session that would facilitate HECO being able to use a less environmentally offensive fuel like LNG?
Like LNG. I haven't seen anything come out of the House, and I don't think, unless something changed on the Senate side, no. I think we have a lot of people that are against LNG. I think it's something we should have looked at, though.
Wouldn't the governor be hard-pressed to say no to that when he's saying no to NextEra?
I think so. We're going to have to look at some other options. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, and this happens on our Revolution show, Revolution provides homeowners with the ability to control their own destiny with the PV. And what they're saying, and other solar providers are saying, hey, look, NextEra is all about PV. They're going to come in, put PV everywhere and wind and all of this stuff because they're going to be, look, you got to explain, Beth, aren't they under the exact same mandate not to use fossil fuels?
Yes, they would, in theory, because they're coming into the state.
Right, where there's a mandate.
One of the concerns, and I know Cynthia Thielen and of our caucus had this concern that in Florida, where there should be a lot more renewable energy, they're not doing it. So, and NextEra is operating Florida. So
yeah, and that means they're still burning an awful lot of coal.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I know that I don't want to say that it's a cruise, but there are a lot of things that need cleaning up this week. But there's still a lot of bills that you're taking input on. Is there anyone in particular that you're looking at?
You know, the one thing to watch, I would say, is to keep an eye on that transportation bill that raises the taxes for motor vehicles and gas taxes and all that. I know that's what we get the most calls about.
That'll be next week, the number one thing, that gas tax.
It should be dead right now. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it.
You know, it's kind of interesting because they always get us where we need to get stuff every day. Like milk, tobaccos, and gas.
Yep.
Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this session.